Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us for this discussion on inspiring the next generation of solar leaders. I'm Erika Symmonds, Director of Workforce Development at Grid Alternatives. Grid Alternatives is a nonprofit organization that makes solar power accessible to underserved communities. We install solar exclusively for low-income families using a volunteer model that provides opportunities for job trainees, community volunteers, and anyone interested in solar to get on a roof and get hands-on experience. Today's webcast is part of our Women in Solar initiative that we launched in partnership with SunEdison to bring more women into the industry and to help women already in the industry thrive. Our solar industry grew 20% last year, and in order to sustain that fantastic level of growth and ensure that the industry is meeting the needs of consumers, we need to bring voices, talents, and leadership of women to the table. We organized this series of panel discussions to inspire more women to join the industry, as well as to have frank discussion about some of the barriers women face and how we tackle them. All of our previous webcasts are available at our website, gridalternatives.org/women. You'll also find more information about our national Women in Solar initiative and other ways that you personally can get involved. I'd like to introduce the topic today, which is the intersection of gender and race as it relates to employment and leadership in the solar and tech industries. Discrimination or lack of inclusion experienced because of gender can be directly related, encouraged, and shaped by someone's race and ethnicity as well. Generally, these things do not operate in their own silos. Today, we're joined by panelists from the nonprofit world and the private sector to discuss the unique barriers that women of color face in the solar and tech industries and what can be and is being done to address these things so that we can build a stronger and more inclusive solar economy. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and briefly describe their organization and companies, their role, and what inspires them to speak about this topic. And I'd like to hand it off first to Tamika Jacques, Director of Workforce Development at the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center.
Thank you, Erika. Hi, my name is Tamika Jacques, Director of the Workforce Development at the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. Our center was created in 2008, and we were created to accelerate clean energy technologies across Massachusetts, and which leads to economic development and workforce development, hence my position, Director of Workforce Development. And as the director, I have created several programs while I've been here almost the past 4 years. And some of the things that I've worked on are creating internships for high school students, creating internships for college students, and these are paid internships actually. Last year we placed over 450 college students in paid internships in clean energy companies all across Massachusetts. I also create workforce capacity programs around making sure that the employers that are in Massachusetts, as a lot of them are,
So we're having a little bit of a technical freeze up there, so we're going to come back.
Creating programs that allow women and minorities to network. So I've done a lot of networking events this year put on because we know that the lack of minorities and women in this industry, in the solar and the tech fields. So a little bit of event planning as well. I think what makes me passionate about this topic is that, you know, personally, when you go into board meetings or when you go into meetings and you are the only one in the room, and then you are the only one of color in the room and making decisions. So that drives me because I would like to see other women and minorities at the table. I don't want to be the only one constantly, especially in Massachusetts. So I'm very passionate about this because I feel that Personally, I come from a long line of women leaders, and just personally in my family, and I think that the tech industry, the solar industry, the clean energy industry, it definitely is, not only is it a career pathway, but it's an economic career pathway. It's not a dead-end pathway. So, choosing this field, getting others involved in this field will provide economic stability for future generations and for families. And I just want to thank the other ladies for allowing me to serve on this panel with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tamika. And next we're going to hand it off to Dana Clare Redden of Solar Concierge.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for having me on this panel with these esteemed ladies. I'm the owner of Solar Concierge. We're a consultant group based in Atlanta, Georgia. And what we do is represent the owner, building owners, and our clients looking to procure solar throughout the entire procurement process. So we make sure they make educated decisions. We make sure they know what options are available to them, from financing to which installer to pick to construction management. And what inspires me really to join this panel this morning and to wake up every morning and do solar is I really truly believe this is a career for the future. Perhaps women in previous generations and people of color in previous generations didn't have many opportunities to get involved with historically game-changing industries such as even the railroads or oil, or maybe even the internet, how many years ago. But now we've got this energy revolution, and just as Tamika said, we can build generational wealth by participating in this industry. So thank you so much. I'm inspired by everyone here, and I just want to do what I can to make sure there are more women and people of color in this industry.
Thanks so much, Dana. And now we will turn our attention to Tamara Mullings of the SunEdison team.
Thanks so much, Erika, and it's very exciting to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. I'm Tamara Mullings. I'm Chief of Staff at SunEdison. In my role, I help coordinate corporate strategy, special strategic projects, and I advise the CEO in matters such as diversity and inclusion. At our company, there are 4 reasons why we really invest in diversity and inclusion, which we define as gender, identity and expression, sexual orientation, professional background, veteran status, ethnicity, race, nationality, is because there's so much data that proves that diverse teams make better decisions, data from Credit Suisse, McKinsey, Ernst & Young. We can also attract better talent if we are looking at the entire talent pool instead of just one piece of that pool. Thirdly, having a diverse team allows us to better understand our very diverse customer base. And lastly, it's the right thing to do. And so I'm really excited about this conversation, and I spend a lot of time thinking about diversity and inclusion because I identify as an African American female and can certainly understand some of the challenges and opportunities associated with that. I think also, like Dana mentioned, there is so much opportunity in this industry. It really is a revolution, a game changer, a rocket ship. And so I love to bring more people into the industry to take advantage of those opportunities.
Great, thank you, Tamara. And last but not least is Mimi Fox Melton, representing the tech side of the conversation. And before Mimi starts, I just want to bring some context. Both tech and solar are really younger industries in the history of our country where, as some of y'all have already commented on, there's lots of opportunity. Industry is still growing, developing, and I think there's definitely things that we can learn from each other and innovations that we can bring to inspire other industries. So I'm really excited to have Mimi representing the team at Code 2040 for this discussion. So Mimi, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Erica. Hi, everyone. Really glad to be here also. So I'm Mimi Fox-Melton. I'm the Director of Programs at Code 2040. Code 2040 is a nonprofit that's based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we work with Black and Latino computer science majors and help them get connected to careers in the tech economy, the innovation economy. Our work also is intimately intertwined with tech companies, where we help them look at their culture, their hiring practices, and really pick apart where they can make internal changes to help them be more attractive to talent of color and then retain that talent once they're hired. The thing that really motivates me about this work is, as has already been mentioned, really believing that tech, these new innovative industries, are a path to building wealth in communities of color, that our communities are overwhelmingly the most early adopters for technology, and that we're not involved in the creation of that technology. And so I believe that our communities know intuitively how to make the technology that we need, and that there are opportunities that are currently going unfilled. You know, we know that tech has a high degree of unfilled jobs, and there are a lot of folks of color who are qualified and excited to fill those jobs. So at Code 2040, we make the business case for diversity, as Tamara mentioned, about that companies that have diverse workforces make more money and have better ideas. And we, over 40 well-known software engineering companies partner with us because they believe that too. So our flagship program is a fellows program that we run every year that are paid internships for Black and Latino computer science majors here in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley. And we are expanding this work this year. I'll hopefully get to talk about that a little bit more.
Great, thank you so much, Mimi, and thank you for all of our panelists being on this webcast today. As we have this conversation, I do think it's important to provide some context. This topic might be new for folks, and folks are coming from different places, so I did want to present some foundation to start off of. First of all, I want to acknowledge, we're talking about women in solar, but, gender is definitely not binary, and there's lack of representation and also barriers faced by transgender individuals, gender nonconforming individuals, and others that don't quite fit on a binary scale that we typically look at gender on. So it's important to consider that as we have this conversation. So what is the diversity mix within these industries? The Wall Street Journal analyzed some diversity reports from 11 of the world's largest tech companies. And we do see some situations where people of color are not underrepresented. In tech, people of Asian descent are well represented overall for tech roles. However, that representation does drop when you look at leadership of companies and the decision makers. In the solar industry, you'll also see that people who identify as Latino or Hispanic are well represented, but again, lacking in leadership roles. But 59, whether you're looking at the solar or the tech industry, women in general are, and women of color are underrepresented overall. And women are 59% of the workforce in the U.S. From that Wall Street Journal analysis, 30% of the tech industry is currently women. And the Solar Census provides, for the last few years, Solar Foundation rather provides an analysis of the solar industry, and they found that 21% of the industry was women. So both of those are significantly lower than the 59% of the U.S. workforce that women represent. We do have some more information on racial and ethnicity side of the tech workforce. 3% of the computing workforce is Black women, and Black people overall represent 13% of the U.S. population. 5% of the computing workforce was women who identify as Asian, and Asians do make up about 5.5% of the U.S. population. But in tech, it can go up to 20%. So you can see that women are lacking in representation there compared to their male counterparts. And with Hispanic or Latina women representing 2% of the computing workforce, while Latinos and Hispanics make up about 17.5 of the U.S. Population. So I just want to provide some context as we go into deeper conversation here. And I'm going to ask our panelists, based on what you've observed in your field, what are some of the ways that gender and racial bias combined play out in affecting the existence and experience of women of color in the solar and tech labor markets? And we'll go back to Tamika.
Sorry. Just to add on to a little bit of statistics, I can talk about, you know, what you just said, validating it in Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, women represent about 52% of the workforce in Massachusetts. And then in the clean energy industry in general, it's about 22%. So, you know, those are pretty much in line with some of the statistics that that you referred to, Erika, when you're talking about that. And just if I can put more statistics into some of the programs that I run. So our internship program, when I first came here in 2011, it was almost 85% males were getting internships and 15% were women. And so it just goes to show you, when you talk about some of the challenges, you know, as we know that a lot of the CEO and the leaders oftentimes are male, right? So it's like 96% of males that lead our nations. Businesses are males. And so when you talk about the challenges, it's just even getting their resume in the door, the first, before you even get to see someone in person. It's just getting someone to look at their resume. And a lot of times us as women, when we see some things that I've talked to some male CEOs or, you know, males that have that are in the hiring process, a lot of times they'll say to me, well, what am I doing wrong? And I say to them, sometimes it's even can be how you write that job description, because us as women will see a job description and maybe we can only do 6 out of 10 of the position, 6 out of 10 items on the position, and we'll say, no, you know, I can't apply for that because 4 of those items I don't know how to do. Whereas a male, when they apply, maybe they can only do, you know, 4 out of 10 of the items listed, but they're going to say, you know, they're going to tell somebody what they can do. And so I just think the beginning challenges, before we kind of look further down the line, and some of the other ladies can speak about that, but the beginning challenge is just getting us women to really get our resume in the door, you know, whether it's through networking, but getting the people that have the hiring decision have that in their favor to get our resumes in front of them, and for us to teach, you know, other women through mentoring that we can do these jobs. We just need someone that can kind of mentor us through and kind of coach us through. So I don't want to take up all the minutes, but I think the first challenge that when I think about it, that I work with the, you know, women on, is making sure that our resumes are right and that we feel confident when we apply, because sometimes maybe we can only do 6 out of the 10 descriptions, but I guarantee you when you get in there you can probably do, you know, more than what's on the job description.
Great, thank you, Tamika. And Tamara, I would love to hear some of your perspective on this.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what Tamika said. On the kind of private sector corporate side, I think the major challenges are that people in the position to make hiring decisions, a lot of them tend to have very homogenous networks, especially in this industry. People come from construction backgrounds or utility backgrounds or semiconductor backgrounds, which tend to be sectors where women and people of color are underrepresented. And so part of the challenge and what we're working on is getting access to diverse networks and just meeting more talented, diverse employees. And I think Tamika spoke about kind of on the candidate side of the recruiting and interview process. I think on the company side, and I'm sure Mimi will talk a little bit more about this as she works with tech companies, but really redesigning or re-engineering the recruiting and interview processes. So, you know, people, I know I can speak personally, when I come in for an interview or when I'm exploring an opportunity, I like to see people of color or women that I can identify with and ask questions about. It sends a signal to me that this is a place where I can thrive. And so making sure that our interview panels have diverse candidates on them in addition to other folks making the decision. We're doing constant training for leaders on unconscious bias because we know interviews processes can be a breeding ground for unconscious bias, and so that's something that we're working on. And then in general, I think in business, there's a risk aversion to hiring people that are unknown. And so it becomes really important for companies to be out there and networking and looking for referrals from diverse groups so that we can know a little bit more about the candidates and be more comfortable in hiring them.
I'd like to jump in there, Erika.
Please do, Mimi.
So what we know about tech, and particularly the groups that we focus on are Black and Latino folks in tech. 18% of folks who are graduating with computer science degrees are Black and Latino, and yet only 5% of software engineers are Black and Latino. So we see a tremendous drop-off from students who are graduating with degrees to those who are translating into work in tech. And when we've looked deeper into why that's the case, contrary to what Tamika said, in tech, our experience is that where companies think that they are having trouble sourcing diverse candidates, we look at the data and we find that they actually have many women, white women, and many people of color coming to their career sites and applying to their opportunities, but those women, white women, and people of color aren't actually making it through their screening processes. So it's very, very important that we look at the data with individual companies to help them understand where exactly the problem is. Many times they diagnose the problem as we don't have candidates coming in because that's honestly the simplest answer for them. But we can help them really look at where the data says that their challenges are. And the three places that we often look is in their sourcing, their screening, and then their culture. And so what we know is that in a recent study done by Stanford University, they looked at all of the tech companies that were coming on their campus. And what they found were things like companies would come to recruit diverse students and they wouldn't have any diverse employees on the recruitment team. So, or they would, the only people who would speak in front of the group were white men. And they would have a woman there who was folding t-shirts, for example. So simple things like if you want to be attractive to diverse candidates, then you need people of color depicted on your website. You need to look at your job descriptions and understand the unconscious biases in the words that are being used on those job descriptions, knowing that women are much more likely to respond to job descriptions that have paragraph text versus bullets. Men are much more likely to respond to job descriptions that have bullets. And so when you have a job description that's 75% bullets, you're going to have the vast majority of your respondents are going to be men. So really simple things like that that help companies with their sourcing. And then we look at screening where, you know, entry-level folks should not be experiencing the same screening as people with 10 and 15 years of experience in the industry. And so how do we determine, you know, create screens that are really reflective of the work that folks are going to do on their job, and so that we're not creating screenings that are requiring people to demonstrate their skills in ways that just really aren't reflective of what we really want to know about them. Last example on this is that we find that many companies will do technical assessments. So what we want to know, can you code? And then when they debrief and talk about the skills of women and people of color, they'll say things like, well, they could code well, they answered the question, but they just didn't seem confident, or they didn't convince me that they really knew what they were talking about. And so in that screening, really what the employer is looking for are communication skills, not coding skills. So we ask employers to really make the implicit explicit, and if they're going to be evaluating on screening on communication, that they draw that out so that they are not pulling people from the candidate pool based on unconscious biases like Tamara mentioned. And then culture, we have companies that want to look attractive to candidates of color, yet they don't have any employees of color. And so, or the social events that they host for their employees are really based around drinking or bar life or other kinds of fraternal college culture, and that's just not attractive to many women and candidates of color. So we help companies look at their culture and really start there. So unfortunately, there's really no quick fix, but as Erika mentioned, I'm just so excited to be a part of this webinar because I think the challenge for tech is that many of these companies have been around for a long time, and so changing culture, changing unconscious biases in the pipeline is much more challenging for them. But solar is at such an early stage that I think it's really the perfect opportunity to create good habits and to set up practices that don't cause this to be a long-term problem.
Great, thank you, Mimi. And so we're on both sides of the coin in regards to just the candidate pool. What can individuals themselves and their community and networks of support be doing to help people pursue these opportunities and present themselves the best for these opportunities, and also on the employer side, what changes can be made in culture to address the different barriers and biases that are preventing a quicker diversification of the industries. Dana, I'd love to hear from you, being an owner of a solar business, a woman of color, about what you've observed being in that unique position, and I know definitely not seeing many others around you who fit that description. But what has your experience been like, and what have you observed as you break into this industry as an entrepreneur?
Well, thank you. I'd love to address, I think anytime you have some type of perceived disadvantage, it does create an opportunity. I think that had I not seen a lot of opportunity for someone of a double minority status in this field, I might have gone another direction than to open my own shop. So that said, there's definitely some opportunity where we see this traditional homogeneous industry. Just to kind of pick up on what some others had mentioned, I think it's really important to have that confidence. It's intimidating to walk into a room, a boardroom, a meeting with clients and all of their CFOs and representatives, and know that you're the only woman, the only person of color, and probably the only person of your age in some cases. But that just creates more of an opportunity, and speaking for the solar industry in general, being that it's a relatively new industry, at least for the recent advances in technology in this past decade, it gives a unique opportunity for people who look different than traditional industries. So I might be in a room with a couple executives that are all a couple of decades older than myself and look completely different, but because they know that they need my expertise, and because I have a business that caters to that actual need, it gives me an opportunity to really be an expert in the space. And when you can carry yourself with that confidence, to make sure that even if you are getting contradicted by someone, you know what you're talking about, it goes a long way. In addition, I think that one thing that wasn't mentioned, but obviously through entrepreneurship, it really is about that cash flow and that balance sheet. And I think that this is not necessarily unique to the solar industry, but we're having a national conversation about the wage gap between women and our male counterparts, and I do see that in my experiences. You provide someone with your rates, and I think there is sometimes unconscious bias, as it was put, that for whatever reason I'm going to be less cheaper than my perceived competition, or I'm going to work for basically nada. But that's all a matter of making sure that the client realizes the services and the value that you provide. However, I think as from a national standpoint, as we begin to address this in multiple industries, I know the entertainment industry is putting this out there, that we'll be in a much better position as far as that's concerned. So yes, as a business owner, a minority business owner, there are definitely more opportunities. I've been fortunate enough to set up shop here in Atlanta, Georgia, that is really well known for its inclusion in diverse procurement. However, not everyone has that particular advantage nationally. So, I would encourage women business owners and minority business owners to explore those programs. However, I do want to make sure that it is clear that you do not have to go the direction of minority procurement. Sometimes that can provide a disservice in that you get a little bit pigeonholed. Because they might have, let's say, set-asides of, say, 5%, and then people assume that you're looking for 5% of the work as opposed to 95% of the work. So you do have to be careful with that, but it's a great way to get in the door, and just goes to show that there's some really great programs to encourage women business entrepreneurship. I think the current president has put forth a really great program for women and minorities to excel. So those are worth looking into. Lastly, I would say that every perceived disadvantage is actually an opportunity if you look at it from a different perspective.
Thank you, Dana. So I wanna explore these things a little bit deeper from the person pursuing a career side, and also from the employer and organization culture side of things. Tamika, if we can start with you and learning a little bit about what you're doing to address exactly what you described about folks needing a little bit more push on how they present themselves, and also encouragement to pursue things that they might not otherwise pursue.
Sure. So with our high school students, with our college students, I specifically did a networking night for women. So I invited women that are in the industry to come network with college students so they could talk, ask questions. We had questions on the table because, it's not always, we don't all have that personality where we meet someone and we want to tell them who we are, what we're looking for. So we had some questions on the table, and, we were able to just, have a dialogue between, a very small dialogue between each other. And it was great because there were 100 women in the room that could meet new women, people that were all through their career pathways. And because we do provide internships to other companies, we were able to say, if you're networking tonight, we can provide you, if you meet someone that you like, invite them in for an interview, and, there's your internship. So that's, an entry point. But as far as, because I feel like, women, if you look at the CEOs of companies, their career, how does someone become a CEO? When we talk about, oh, there's 96% males as CEOs, and a lot of times the tracks are that most CEOs either started in sales or they started in marketing somewhere at some company, kind of on the lower entry point. And so when I looked at that data, I said, wow, okay, so most of the male CEOs, they've come from sales, they come from marketing. And I said, I want to see more women CEOs out there. So I need to provide a track for them to kind of not just become, you know, not a manager in a company, but I want them to start in sales or marketing. And so I created here, it's called Successful Women in Clean Energy, and it takes women that are from lower income backgrounds or are looking for transition in this clean energy field, and we hired a training provider that provides training for them. It gives them a 5-week intense course on the whole industry, how to sell it, how to market it, in solar and tech, and it could be, you know, heat pumps, all that stuff, and we've trained them how to just market it and sell it. And so at the end of the 5 weeks, these women right now are in interviews as we speak. We're providing them with a fellowship at a clean energy company for 6 months. So it's more than an internship. They'll be where after now that they know the business a little bit, they can kind of speak the language per se. They're going to go in and work in the marketing or the sales office and help with these companies. So they'll be there for 6 months working full time. They'll be considered an employee, and also we'll provide the support so that, you know, and we've had specific classes on how to survive in a male-dominated field. So they've all been briefed, they've been prepped, because we didn't want to just throw them in and scare them. So now that they'll be at these companies for 6 months, and, you know, we're also paying for the support for these ladies. So if they have a couple of bad days, or, you know, they're feeling like they're not either being worked enough, or, you know, the culture is not right for them, or how, you know, they might have questions, how do they approach certain individuals there. We have someone providing support to them as well, and I'm going to link to the employers as well, so that if the employers have any questions, they can kind of fall back on me. So this is just a way to try to get these women in, but in the right career pathway, not just placing them in a company, but really strategically placing them of the pathways that other males have taken to get to that vice president, CEO level. So that's just one of our strategic ways that we've been helping women. And, you know, we call it Successful Women in Clean Energy because I think, you know, whatever you call a program, this should, however you want to see it, I want all these women to be successful. So that's what I named it. And this was our first pilot, and I hope that we'll be able to run more programs like this at, you know, here at Mass CEC.
Wonderful. I hear some great things there in regards to like really intentional design, like looking at a pathway that has demonstrated success and gearing folks up for it. Also recognizing the culture shock that might be experienced and directly addressing that up front in preparation for those opportunities. And the foot in the door. 6 months is time to feel it out for yourself, one, because there's the exploration side, but also a significant amount of time to make your presence felt and get a foot in the industry. So that all sounds wonderful. And Tamara, I want to turn to you because you're a big company. You know, one that you know, folks pursuing careers in solar would look to as a place to be. So in addressing some of the challenges of bringing in more women of color, what are some things about the SunEdison culture and things that y'all are trying to do to attract and not just attract but retain and advance more women of color in the field?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Mimi did a great job explaining how she helps employers kind of identify exactly in the process where things are challenged. And so I mentioned some of the things that we're working on. In terms of culture and retention, it's so important. And even up front, you know, just attracting women of color. I can tell you about my own personal experience. I got to know a lot of renewable energy companies while I was in business school. I just finished last year. And you know, the people that I was meeting, I really took as a signal. So as Mimi described, there was a woman who came to my campus and presented the company. So I first learned about the company from the voice of a woman, and that was really impactful. And when I came in for interviews, most of my interviewers were male, but there were a couple of very impactful, amazing women that I met while I was here for my interviews, and we spoke a lot about business and we spoke a lot about the culture. And there are things here that sent a signal to me that this is a place where I could potentially thrive. So right off the bat, a zero tolerance harassment policy for all of our employees. I noticed that there was extended maternity and paternity leave for people with families. There was flex time to accommodate different people's lifestyles and family situations. And then there's sponsorship programs here, none specifically targeted to race or ethnicity, but certainly to gender, that pairs people up with people director level above. Those who are more senior in their career are paired with an executive who's not only providing mentoring, but real sponsorship and advocacy for this person in their career, helping them to find their next move, what skills they need to develop. And so all of those kind of programs and policies sent a signal to me that this was a place that I could thrive. Now that I'm here, I've certainly been able to experience that. We're nowhere near where we want to be in terms of I think racial and ethnicity and sexual orientation, gender expression in those areas. We certainly believe that the business case is strong for diversity, and we need a lot more diverse folks to really gain the benefits of having these diverse teams helping us make better decisions and understand our customers better. But there's certainly an initial effort, and I think for those of us who want to work in the solar industry or are already here, we certainly have choices about where we want to go. And even not being able to get into the door at a company is a signal that potentially they haven't prepared themselves to really build a diverse and inclusive workforce. So in a lot of ways, we're trying to be that company that can attract people because we want the diversity here. It's a competitive advantage, a real opportunity.
Wonderful, thank you, Tamara. Mimi, Tamara mentioned mentoring and sponsorship, and I want to connect that to the fact that you have a cohort model with Code 2040, which also brings in like a strong community of folks going through the same process and similar experiences. So I'd love for you to comment on how the cohort, how y'all approach mentoring for the cohort, and how these things play into some successes that you've had.
Yeah. Thanks, Erika. What we hear from students is that when they're in university, I've heard one student describe it as a black box. It really feels like they are isolated, they don't have connections to the broader tech network, they don't really know what's happening in tech outside of their university, and they're not sure that the education that they're getting is really preparing them for jobs in tech. And what we know is that their education is not really preparing them for jobs in tech. They are learning how to be computer scientists, but they're not necessarily learning how to be software engineers, and they're certainly not learning how to navigate the networking and the professional development that's required to get in the door, like we've heard the other panelists talk about. And the cohort model brings together students of color in the same place, and we, in addition to the fellowships that they, to the internships that they are a part of in the summer, we do a summer's worth of programming with them that's designed to really introduce them to other people in the industry who can at the very least show them that people of color can be successful in this work, and that there are other people of color who look like them and have similar backgrounds to them doing this work and doing it really well. But also we know that in tech it is very, very common, as Tamara mentioned, for companies to hire by referral. And many companies hire who are 99% white, have 99% white folks in their networks, and so it really becomes an echo chamber of folks who have not only the same race and ethnicity, but similar life experiences. So there are not students don't have a lot of examples of people who look like them who are making it. And when they come here and when we go on campus, we make sure that we bring lots of examples of folks who are successful and who are Black and Latino. And it's also an opportunity for students to share resources. They encourage each other. They have these similar experiences of imposter syndrome, and stereotype threat when they're in tech, and getting to talk about that with other folks who are people of color helps. Essentially, what we hear from students is that they are afraid sometimes to talk about these challenges with non-people of color because they don't want to reinforce the stereotypes about their race or gender as weak or incapable. So having the resources of other folks of color really, really helps them open up and know that they're not alone in their experience. And as far as sponsorship, it's huge. I mean, in our company partners, the company partnerships that are most successful, we have someone on staff who is an evangelizer for Code 2040, who is an evangelizer for diversity, who is pushing in all of the meetings, who to bring in diverse talent, who is willing to spend time outside of their work, mentoring, doing one-on-ones, teaching, and really having hard conversations about what it means to change the company culture. And so I just encourage those of you who are thinking, I'm in a company with 10,000 people, and how do I really make a difference? One person isn't enough. We need more, but one person really can make a difference. And it's been our experience that it often takes one person who is willing to carry the water to really impact the conversation that's happening within their organization.
No, that's huge, and I think a good message to everyone watching that one person can make a significant difference. And I am curious as we go through this conversation, and if y'all want to think about it now about somebody who significantly or an experience you had where somebody really sponsored you and supported you through this process of your career so far. I just want to let our audience know that you should see a chat function on the webcast where you can submit some questions, which we'll get to in just a few minutes. Before we do that, I do want to touch on the younger generation. These fields, I believe, are going to continue to grow, and there's been a lot of talk about STEM education, which I think is connected to both tech and solar. And Dana, I know that you've been involved in some work to inspire young folks and expose them to the possibilities and to the fact that their talents can contribute to these fields. So I would love for you to touch on a little bit of that, and to open it up to the rest of y'all after that to comment on your personal mentors or where you see the role of STEM education in creating more inclusion in this field.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'd love to talk about that a little bit. Basically, I think it really does, to just elaborate on Mimi's point, it is about mentorship. It is about having that individual that you can reach out to in times where you don't really know the answer, or the terrain is maybe a little unknown, which happens in everyone's career. If that's not the case, then you're not really pushing yourself. But it is important to always, I believe, reach back and be that mentor for as many people as you can. I think that we have to do a little bit more. I think each one teach one is great, but in our personal cases, maybe we need to pick up 3 and make some time for those individuals and make ourselves available. All that to say, I'm the education chair for the Georgia Energy Georgia Solar Energy Association, and we've been fortunate enough to reach out to the education community in the state and try to engage students, K through 12 students at a young age, to at least expose them to this industry. I know growing up, I really didn't know about solar energy until, undergrad. And at that point, I had already picked, a parallel career. However, had I known about it sooner, I might have, had that opportunity a little bit, a little bit earlier in my career. All that to say, we've started an essay contest. This just gives high school students an opportunity to think about how will solar change the world. It's a 250-word essay contest, not a elongated effort. We're starting rather small, but this is really the opportunity to start to engage these students to start to prompt their thinking about clean energy in general. If we went into the technical stuff, by the time they've graduated college, it would probably look completely different. But this at least gives them that global perspective on this industry. And in addition, it allows them to express that. The winner of this contest is going to read their essay at our annual holiday luncheon, where we have all of the politicos and the typical industry professionals. And I don't see this as just an opportunity for the students to learn. As a matter of fact, one of our Public Service Commission members had talked about his whole perspective shift was when he had a couple grandkids, and he realized that clean energy wasn't just about his financial portfolio, it was about the future generations to come. So not only are these students reflecting on how solar will change the world for them, they're giving the opportunity for others of another generation to learn from their perspective and potentially change a couple minds. It's definitely an opportunity for both sides of the equation to think about it in perhaps a different way. So all that to say, it's very important for us all to reach out to members of another generation to prompt their thinking. The earlier the better, and also to recognize that they can help to educate others, and they don't have to be in K through 12 schools to learn a little bit more about this industry.
Thank you, Dana. So I'd like to open it up in case any of y'all would like to comment on the STEM education, and also any additional comments on mentorship.
This is Mimi again. Yeah, my subject matter expertise is not in STEM education. However, from my personal experience, I want to plug white allies in this work, and that I seek communities of color actively as I do this work for support, for kind of collaboration, for sharing, commiseration sometimes, and yet because the tech industry and most industries, quite frankly, are super, super white, it is not only people of color who make this work successful. We have to have white allies who understand the need for diversity and who are seeking out folks to mentor them, to mentor and sponsor. And I would not be where I am today if it weren't for white men and white women who saw something in me and who were willing to invest their time, to put their neck on the line, to put me in roles that maybe I wasn't quite ready for, but that were really amazing learning opportunities for me, and then to support me through those learning roles. And the other thing that I want to say, Code 2040, we work a lot with majority white tech companies, and a lot of what we hear from white folks in tech is that they're really afraid to talk about race. They're really afraid to talk about diversity because they're scared to say something wrong that will have others perceive them as racist, or that will hurt someone else. And so we really try to cultivate community where there is understanding and forgiveness and room for folks to be uncomfortable and be and to get it wrong, and knowing that that is really the way that that folks learn. So I encourage our white allies who are listening today to not be afraid if you're not really sure how to talk about race or to talk about diversity or to talk about sexism or sexual harassment. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we really need you to speak up and to take action. And there are many folks out there who are willing to teach and give feedback and help you get better. So don't let the fear of doing it wrong stop you from trying.
No, I think those are very important points, and in order to see change, we need efforts from all sides. And one of our listeners just wrote in that she would like to know more about like what women encounter from their male counterparts in non-traditional areas. You're speaking about racial allies, also gender allies, and she asked the question of, what are some of the experiences you've had, and do you feel like you constantly have to prove yourself in the industry? Tamara, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that resonates with me a lot on two fronts. I mean, one, I think that I'll speak very personally. I was kind of raised under the mandate that you always have to prove yourself. You always have to give 110% and be way better than your peers just to be seen as, kind of average or acceptable. And a lot of that, I think, is cultural and internal. It's certainly true in a lot of places, and I've been lucky in my career, or perhaps wise, to avoid people and companies where that's kind of the mandate on people of color and for women. But I certainly wouldn't be where I am in my career without a lot of wonderful people from all different races and gender. I've certainly had a lot of white male mentors, like Mimi said, who have invested in me, seen my potential, given me opportunities. And in our industry, until our numbers increase, we almost have to, rely on each other and the people who are here in the industry to provide that mentorship and support. So the way that I approach my career is try to quiet the demons, as I call them, that are telling me that I have to be 110%, I have to be better than everyone else, and really just focus on being the very best Tamara that I can, and really focusing on my development and finding, being strategic and finding people who are willing to help develop me and see my potential, and avoiding those who are going to be discouraging or biased. And there's certainly a lot of great people. I'd add to Mimi's list of not being afraid, being curious. That curiosity, I think, is a really important characteristic for allies and people who want to make a difference in this area. Curiosity of learning and meeting people and seeing potential in people of color and women.
I do want to touch on something that came up earlier when you were speaking, Tamara, about your experience going into interviews and kind of watching who's here, what does this say about a company. We did get a question in from the audience about how would you bring up gender or race in an interview, and I think that's connected to what you're doing. But do any of y'all have tips as you're trying to feel out a company, other ways of looking at the gender and race topic, and how you explore that with the companies you're interested in?
I'll start, and then I'd love to hear from other folks. I think a great way to bring up topics, not just about gender and diversity, but about culture, about development opportunities, those kind of softer things that I think are extremely important to understand. Are you going to fit with this company? Is not even the interview. It's kind of before then. LinkedIn is a fantastic tool. Most people that I've encountered in the solar industry are willing to connect with people who are interested in this space. And I like to have those conversations before the interview when I'm trying to learn about a company. So before we're in that kind of evaluation stage where we probably need to focus on the role and the business unit and what skills I bring to the table. But those are really important questions to ask. And so I get contacted all the time by people who are interested in SunEdison, and we talk outside of the interview about what the culture is like here, what kind of people thrive here, and we talk gender and inclusion for sure. And I think those are great questions to bring up with people even before you get to the interview.
As we're actually coming close to a close here, would anybody like to chime in with one last comment?
Yeah, we encourage our students to use the interview as an opportunity to get to know the organization the same way that the organization is looking to get to know them, and to, like Tamara said, ask questions about the company's diversity initiatives, where their diversity numbers are, what their goals are, and many times the response of the person with whom they are speaking will speak volumes about the work that the company has done. Especially if you're talking to an HR recruiter, they should be really comfortable talking about diversity and talking about the work that they're doing. And if they're not, it's a good indication that the company hasn't done the thought process around how to diversify, and probably therefore is going to be less diverse.
Wonderful. I want to thank each of you for being a part of this webcast. I really have appreciated this conversation. For those of y'all who are interested in learning more, we will be sending out a follow-up email to those who joined us for this webcast, and I'll include information about each of the organizations and companies represented here today, and also about the programming at Grid Alternatives, everything from our Solar Futures initiative in partnership with SunPower, bringing solar education to the K through 12 grades, and also our volunteer and training opportunities, including within our Women in Solar and RISE initiatives. I'll also include links to any data that I've referenced during this call. But thank you very much. It's been a wonderful conversation, and we look forward to the work that each of y'all are going to continue to do to build strong solar and tech industries that are diverse, inclusive, and leading the way in our U.S. industries. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks, Erika.